with a presentation about European Innovation Council. Welcome on the stage.
What do you see? A little spark slowly growing bigger, lighting up the dark. Imagine what it could be. What do you see? A robot that feels sustainable fiber, or software that captures the world in 3D. Wooden wind turbines, transparent solar panels, reinventing the way we use our energy. A tiny idea, so crazy it's hard to believe. An invention with the intention to change the world drastically. It's something we would love to see. So, tell us what you need to reimagine, to reinvent the world. We can give you a place where unicorns are born. You can change your dreams, helping hands, machinery, bigger plans, or just a chance to show the world something they haven't seen. So, what do you see?
Okay, good morning. I'm Stefan Wacki. I'm from the European Innovation Council, and I will start off with a presentation of what the EIC is about and what it can do actually to accelerate your company, your ideas, and make them a success. So I have a few slides to set the scene, and then I will have Christina who joined me, and we'll have a bit of a chat on the issues that we are looking at right now at the level of the EIC. So why the EIC? So the EIC is basically the European, I would say, response to a number of problems that we have identified that we have in Europe. The first one is that Europe is very good at doing research, very good at developing great ideas in the lab, but not so good at transforming those ideas into successes, into companies. So in other words, Europe has been quite good at using money to create science, but not very good at using science to make money. So what the IC is trying to resolve is to address this problem. And when we have analyzed this a bit deeper, we have realized that we have two issues, more specifically the so-called two valleys of death, which is the first one from the transition from lab to enterprise, and the second one, the early scale-up process for high-risk, innovative startups. And we have developed, of course, instruments in order to address these two valleys of death. And of course, one last issue that we have observed in Europe, I mean, especially when you compare it to our cousins across the Atlantic, is that the ecosystem in Europe is very fragmented. We have lots of initiatives, lots of places where this innovation is emerging, lots of universities and corporates and research centers that are operating across the European Union, and they tend to be quite fragmented and not very connected to one another. And we are trying to make sure at European level that we ensure more impact for those initiatives and that we can help them connect better with one another. Now, when we look at where we stand, again, in comparison to our cousins across the Atlantic, obviously Europe has a problem of a gap of financing, even if, of course, the situation of the VC market has improved over the years. We still have a gap of about 4 to 5 times less money invested in VC, in venture capital in Europe when we compare it to the US, which is particularly problematic because Europe produces more startups than America, and therefore we have more difficulties to find the necessary financing available. So what did we do with all this? Well, we have developed the European Innovation Council, which is the most ambitious program so far that Europe has put in place in order to try to address those challenges. So we have 10 billion euros to spend in the years 21 to 27. We have already, of course, started last year, and you will see that we have already committed about 1 billion, a little bit more than 1 billion euros of that money already. So we will spend about 1.3, 1.4 million every year. We are covering the entire chain of innovation from the idea on a piece of paper to the moment the company is scaling up actively and commercializing already its innovation. And we are doing that also because we have decided to set up a fund, a VC fund, to actually implement those investments that we believe are essential in those high-risk innovations and high-risk startups in Europe. We are also going to have initiatives and measures to boost the ecosystem across Europe in partnership with the main actors of this ecosystem. And of course, we have started implementing it, like I said, in 2021, when 1.5 billion was already allocated. And also this year in 2022, when we have allocated 1.7 billion. And we are, of course, running calls in order to select the best proposals to allocate that money to the different initiatives. So what are the main features of the EIC? And here we have tried to focus where Europe is particularly lagging in comparison to the US, which is on breakthrough market creating deep tech type of technologies and innovations. Why those? Because of course those require more time to mature. They require more effort to get technological validation, to test and their prototypes and so on. And this is where, of course, Europe continues to have a significant edge because of the scientific underpinning of this type of innovations and technologies, but where we have difficulties to, given the risk level perceived by the market, to give them a fair chance to compete against the competitors we have around the world. We believe that most of these innovations often happen at the intersections between different sectors and domains. That's why we function mostly in what we call bottom-up way. In other words, we leave it completely open for the innovators to basically come to us without specifying different sectors for different pots of money. And we are steered by the EIC board, and Christina will join me in a minute, of leading innovators, entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, coming from experience in public authorities. And the idea here is that the EIC board is really helping us, not only telling us, well, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, but concretely telling us what we are not getting right, what we need to improve quickly, what we didn't really think about, and this actual, I would say, constant check on what we do is essential in order to make sure that what we are doing in terms of the program makes sense and actually is agile enough to follow the trends that we see appearing there, because as you will see from the discussion with Christina, the EIC board is fully, of course, involved itself in the ecosystem at the right level. We have a number of business acceleration services in order to help those young companies, those young innovators, to plug the gaps where they have those gaps. I mean, particularly finding the right financials, explaining how you manage a company properly, how to connect to investors and in what way, being able to approach large corporates to sell your innovations or find ways to integrate those innovations into processes that large corporates, for example, are running. All these business acceleration services, we have now quite a lot of experience with them, are of course great opportunities for the companies that we select to connect to the right partners that they need in order to grow. We also apply the so-called proactive management principle, which means that we'll follow the innovation, we'll follow the research, and if something is not, developing exactly well, we will reduce the funding, but we will also can actually change the content of the project in order to follow the results of that research. In other words, we have a situation when we can be very agile in the type of funding that we provide, more in link with the innovation that is being created. And we can also provide a faster track to access to the accelerator for the projects that are successful under the Pathfinder and under the EIT KICS. So, like I said, the EIC board plays quite a key role in ensuring that the program is fit for purpose. It was appointed in November last year for a 2-year mandate. And it defines with the European Commission the strategy of the program, its annual installment, what we call work program, can provide advice on broader innovation policy. It's a very diverse group. Like I said, it includes entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, I would say participants in the ecosystem in various different ways. It's a gender-balanced group, and we are quite proud about that, and also very geographically balanced across the European Union, and also some associated countries to the EU, which are also eligible to support under the program. And of course, among those associated countries, there is Norway, for example, but there is also Ukraine. This group is meeting quite often, about every month and a half, and quite challenging this discussion with the European Commission in order to make the program, like I said, go further and deeper in our mandate. So now if we go into the actual mechanics of what we offer 3 funding instruments. These 3 funding instruments, you have them here, the Pathfinder, which is an early stage research from TRL 1 to 4, Transition, which is a new instrument that is supposed to take your research project and get it to the point of technological maturation from proof of concept to validation, so TRL 3 to 6, and the Accelerator. So the Accelerator, of course, there is aimed at startup and SMEs. It's for TRL 6 to 9, and here the main support that we envisage is blended finance with a combination of grants up to 2.5 million and equity up to 15 million euros in order to start this early scale-up. So as you can see, we have the means to develop your ideas, first at the level of research, and then to make the transition to a company, and then accelerate that company in the first early stages of the scale-up process. So now if we put a bit the spotlight on this different instrument, I will start with the Pathfinder, which is here looking at research projects that are developing breakthrough or game-changing technologies. It is, of course, again, mainly bottom-up, mainly open, even if we have defined a number of challenges for sectors that are very important, health, energy, digital technologies. It is a mainly collaborative instrument where usually partners team up 3 or more in order to bring such a new technologies to life. And we apply, of course, this mechanism of proactive management with the help of program managers, which is another important feature of the program when we have people taken from the industry and they are brought inside the walls of the EIC to help us select the best project here in the Pathfinder and make sure that there is a coherence among portfolios to do it. We also have the possibility, like I said, to be more agile with the funding and add smaller grants to enhance the results of a project if that is needed. Then the second instrument, Transition, here it is aimed at transforming research into innovation opportunities, so addressing, like I said, the first valley of death, transition from lab to enterprise. And here we are taking results that have reached the proof of concept and try to accelerate them to the level of the enterprise. It's again mainly bottom-up, but we have also identified a number of challenges, such as medtech, energy storage, and it can be single applicants or collaborations in order to allow for this transition to apply at whatever stage it is of formation. And here, in the first phase, we will of course turn first to those that have reached results at the stage of the Pathfinder of the proof of concept under the European Research Council. So for these 2 first instruments, the support is grants with up to 2.5 to 4 million euros that can be given in support, and being given, of course, through call for proposals, and then you will see at the end of my presentation how you can access those calls. Then I will turn to the EIC Accelerator, on which I will spend a bit more time, because of course this is the flagship instrument that the EIC is doing. Here we support startup and SMEs to develop and scale up innovation with high risk and high impact potential. We are aiming here at those that have really the capacity to build up European, I would say global players in breakthrough technologies, in those that will define, I would say, the landscape in these new emerging technologies of the future. It's done mostly, again, bottom-up, and it's mostly being implemented through blended finance, and I will spend a bit more time on that. So just to illustrate, in the year 2022, we have a budget of close to 1.2 billion available for the EIC Accelerator, of which it's shared equally between, more or less equally between the part that is fully open and the part that is on challenges, being of course focused on what we call open strategic autonomy. As you know, the European Union is trying to be more autonomous in certain areas that are of strategic interest for the Union, such as health, lessons of the pandemic, but also microprocessors, for example. As you know, this sector is encountering a lot of difficulties in the supply chain in the world today. And other sectors that are important for us, such as cybersecurity and so on, to ensure that European businesses have access to these key technologies and innovations in order for them to grow in the future. We do that with cutoff. Main calls deadline are represented here, so the 23rd of March already happened, and we have already finished the evaluation of that first call last week. The second deadline is the 15th of June, and then the 5th of October. Lots of information can be accessed, of course, on the internet in order to apply. What you need to know, of course, is you apply in phases. In other words, at the beginning, you will just be asked to draft a small proposal that will be tested, and then we'll take it from there with you. So what are we looking for? We are looking for innovations that have a very strong scientific underpinning that can lead to technological breakthrough, what we call in our jargon deep tech, and where, of course, the significant funding is needed over a longer time frame because of the risk level perceived by the private investors, which often act as a kind of a deterrent for them to invest. So our approach here is to try to de-risk as much as possible this early stage of the growth of the company, and this is where we believe we can make the most impact. So now if we go into the details of what are the different options you can apply to, equity and of up to 15 million, grant up to 2.5 million. This is the main proposal we offer, the so-called EIC blended finance, but you can also apply for grant only, grant first, or equity only. So the grant component, be aware, is maximum 2.5 million. Here you will need to have 30% of the money available at your level, because we can cover only 70% of the eligible cost. So in other words, it means that about 1.1 million needs to be, you need to find them somewhere else. And usually the project will be completed in 2 years, even if the possibility of extension on the basis of actual real delays is of course possible. On the investment component, up to 15 million, and we can give here equity in the company, which is the overall goal, but transitorily we can of course have a quasi-equity instrument, which is a convertible. And we always hold a minority ownership. On average, it's about 7%, but we can go a bit higher if it's needed. And of course here, we apply the patient capital principle, which means that we are not in a hurry to have a return. We can stay in the company for a period, a time horizon of 7 to 10 years, possibly extended to 15 years. So now if we look at the different options that are possible, if you have the means to scale up your initiative, but at the same time you need a bit of money to cover your remaining research and development and testing cost, you can apply to grant only, but you will have to demonstrate to us that you only need the grant to do this testing and you don't need the money for doing the financing later on because your investors are ready to do it or you have that money yourself. If you're not so sure about the results of the research and development testing that you need to do, you can apply to grant first and reserve for later the possibility to apply for equity. And if, of course, you already can foresee that you would like to go to the commercialization phase after the phase of testing has taken place, you can apply for grant and investment, so for blended finance, and then, of course, we will be happy to tackle the package of support together. For those of companies that are a bit more advanced and already have covered the R&D cost and are in full commercialization stage and usually are already trying to find a support from an investor that they have difficulties to close around, you can apply to the equity only, the investment only option, which then will allow a rapid reaction from the EIC fund that will be immediately to participate in a round of investment if you have other investors queuing up to support your companies. So what can you expect from the evaluation steps? Like I said at the beginning, we will just ask you to tell us your story, to record a pitch, and to answer a few questions. And based on the answer that you will get, we have an AI tool that will analyze this information and will give you an answer, and that answer will allow you, for example, to prepare your business plan and to draft your proposal. Then we will allocate, if you wish to use such services, a coach that will help you through the process of preparing your proposal. Then your full proposal, once it's what it has applied, will be assessed by a number of remote evaluators that will basically see whether it's excellent enough, has delivering the impact that we would like to see, and it's the type of innovation that typically we would like to finance. And once this has been passed, you will be invited to pitch your innovation in front of a jury where, well, very competitively, you have a number of jury members that are drawn from the world of innovation and entrepreneurship and investment, will be asking lots of questions to test whether you can be one of the graduates of the EIC. If you are selected then after this pitch, you will be invited first to negotiate and sign the contract, which give you access to the grant component extremely quickly in a matter of 2 months after the end of the evaluation. And then the due diligence will start for the investment component, and that, of course, may last a bit longer, depending on the time horizon that you need in order to get access to that equity, which often is being trenched, so it doesn't come in one bag of money in one go, but will follow a number of milestones in order, of course, not to drown you in money that is unnecessary at the beginning of the process, but give you access to the money as you go along. So now, if we put a bit more the spotlight on that particular part, which is the equity funding, I mean, I will have to say that, of course, the most important here element is the crowding in element. Of course, as a public entity, we are quite keen not to make mistakes and support companies that are not, I would say, fit for purpose. Hence, we have designed a program that we can only release the equity part only when we can crowd in the money that you have been selected with, and it's quite important for us that we apply this principle. And then, of course, we can reserve money in follow-on capital in subsequent rounds. Like I said, the other points I've already covered. We will be there for a longer time horizon perspective, and we take relatively small stake in the companies in order not to dilute the funders. So very quickly, the fund has been now in operation for about 2 years, and we have already agreed 140 deals and signed more than 80 investment agreements, which amount to more than 200 million euros of money. So we are in operation, and we are happy to look at your proposal in that context. The investment process, like I said, looks in detail at, will X-ray your companies, your financials, in the process of due diligence that will be handled for us by the European Investment Bank, that will be in contact and be the leading, I would say, team that you will be dealing with. And the team will prepare the legal work when we complete the analysis in order to sign the investment agreement. Now, in order, of course, to find those co-investors, we are not going to leave you alone. We have a number of activities here that are there to help you present yourself better, to help you have access to the right networks that we have built. So we are acting at all these different levels. We include you into e-pitching events with large corporates. We also have a matchmaking platform where more than 800 investors across Europe that operate across Europe. They're not only European, but they operate across Europe, are already registered, and they are looking at the opportunities that the EIC provides for them. And we, of course, are using very much this feature in order to facilitate the contact between the beneficiaries of the EIC and the potential co-investors. You can find all this information now on this website, where you can see how to apply, and I recommend that you take a look. It's in order to prepare for it. And I will conclude before I invite Christina to join me on stage, and then we will develop some of these points. That we are also develop a number of dedicated action to support women innovators. We have a target to interview at every stage of our evaluations 40% of women-led projects. We meet the excellence criteria, of course. We have also an EIC women leadership programs that look at emerging female innovation leaders in order to provide the necessary support and access to networks in order to boost their profile. And we have an annual EIC prize for women innovator with give 3 times 100,000 euros for Women Innovator Prize and 50,000 euros for Rising Innovator Prize. And finally, the Women Tech EU 2022 program, where we foresee a grant of 75,000 euros for women-led tech startup. I will now stop there and invite Christina Riesen to join me on stage, a member of the EIC board, and we will continue carrying out that conversation on the importance, in particular, of those actions of the EIC in trying to help the emergence of strong women innovators, strong women-led CEOs in Europe. Christina.
Hello, Stefan. Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to join you here at the Wolf Summit and to share all this insightful information about the European Innovation Council. And building up on the last slide you've shown, actually the European Women in VC just released a report, and it has an introduction also from Commissioner Maria Gabriel. I invite you to go online and check it out because, again, the numbers are chilling. 2021 has been, again, an incredible year for raising money in Europe. However, less than 2%, 1.8% to be accurate. So let us just take this in for a second. Less than 2% of the money raised last year went to all women-led startups. And you may say, oh, why is this important? Why is actually gender representation important? Well, research shows that if you have women founders, women in the executive team, companies are actually performing up to 25% better. It is also because women will want to focus on challenges that are affecting our world, our society. and they have a more sustainable way of using the money to build teams, and also including as many voices as possible when developing products. So it's been an incredibly tough journey for an entrepreneur and a woman, actually, in Europe up to now. However, things are about to change. And when I saw the European Innovation Council program emerging, I felt actually personally, being a woman entrepreneur in Europe, I felt really like a little child on Christmas Day. Because what do you need as an entrepreneur, you know? It's been so hard, especially if you have a game-changing idea. If we talk about disruptive innovations, well, chances are investors will be very scared to back you up to start with, right? Fair enough, they want to see traction. So you struggle really to raise money. And then let's say that once you have the money, you will have other challenges as a founder. Access to potential customers, getting coaching, mentoring from the right people, experienced people. Because I think many of the entrepreneurs here know if you get the wrong investors on board, you know, if you don't get to the right people coaching and mentoring you, it just kills your company. It's how it is. So when I saw this program being launched, I really felt wow, because I truly believe Europe has everything it takes to become the leader of the next wave of innovations worldwide. We have incredible talent. It is still a lot of untapped potential out there, including women, as we've just said. And this is why I didn't hesitate, and when the call for board members was launched, I really wanted to become part of this, because I believe that we have to unite forces to work together. And one thing I appreciate about the program, beyond, again, as a founder, you can imagine blended finance, having a patient investor, having access to ecosystems, is really this idea that we can work together and really make things happen.
Christina, more. I mean, since you have a lot of experience in approaching VCs to get support from your startups and so on, why exactly we have that particular situation? I mean, we have indeed observed that during the pandemic, I mean, I can only confirm this anecdotally. I mean, you gave the figures very, very low for 2021, but what we had observed in 2020, 2021 is that, to our surprise, the pandemic did not result into a drop in VC money going towards European startups, but we had heard many, many times, anecdotally at that moment during those years, that that money was not going proportionately towards women-led companies, and we were kind of surprised to understand why this was the case. So, I mean, maybe you can tell us, based on your experience, how come the investors, the world of investment, if you wish, seems to perceive women-led companies are being not worthy of the same type of support, because the proportion of women-led companies and startups that exist in Europe is way higher than the 1.8% that you have measured, and therefore it's around 20-25%. I think ballpark, these are the right figures, and this is what we do actually at the level of the EIC. If you look at the results of the accelerator, we always are, I would say, broadly speaking, proportionately to the proportion of women-led startups in Europe, so around that figure. But how come when we look at private investment, there is this resistance, there is this lack of trust, distrust, I would say even, towards women-led companies?
From the investor side, well, to start with, it is not that we have a lot of women among VCs either. So it starts already there, right? So it's 15%, it's underrepresented. Then it has to do also with unconscious bias. And there's research backing this up, right? So if I am pitching to an investor next to a peer who happens to be a male, is maybe more assertive, is also more into the fake it till you make it mindset, chances are also, let's say, I have an accent, I was born in an Eastern European country, so my English is not flawless. Well, chances are I'm not going to be given, a chance. And there's research on this, and this is a whole topic. So I think much work needs to be made also on the VC side to overcome these biases. Then from the entrepreneur side, I would say that, it's a question of getting also the right support and also standing up as a woman. And I know that there's so many incredibly talented women, also in universities, working on really amazing research, and they have a hard time to stand up and to actually tell the world and have that confidence, that they are up to something really great, because they feel they have to first prove to the world that they have a perfect product, that it's absolutely amazing. And this is not how it works, right? So it's really about having that support system. And with the EIC, as you've seen also previously, there's a whole ecosystem of support for entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs as well, in order to get coaching, mentoring, and first of all, it starts with that inner belief that I encourage all of you to have, that your idea is worth getting out into the world. So I personally would like to encourage all women, or becoming now women entrepreneurs in Europe, to take this first courageous step and share it. Share with the world what you're up to, and then don't be afraid to apply. Don't be afraid to get engaged in the ecosystems, because there's much support waiting for you out there. And with the right coaching, with mentoring, with also, it's a journey, it's a learning journey. So yes, inevitably you will have to fail along the way probably as well. This is what entrepreneurship is all about. But know that you don't have to reinvent the wheel either. And it starts with this first step: join the ecosystems. Start talking about your idea. Start connecting with people who believe in you. And then apply to the EIC. As you've seen, even if it's early stage, you have the Pathfinder, then you have the transition program. And if you already are, have a validated idea, you can definitely apply for the accelerator to scale it up. And we need you. And I would really like to urge you to do this, because it is a historical moment, I would say, that we are living today. And we have this opportunity by coming together and using our talent to make sure that Europe is going to lead in innovation worldwide.
Thank you, Christina. I mean, you have the details. I mean, if you have a women-led company for the accelerator, you can qualify as a women-led company if there is a woman that is either CEO, CFO, and CSO in your company. So you can look at it, and of course, we'll be very happy to look at these proposals in line with what Christina has said. So come to us, look at the opportunities that are being offered, and indeed, we have all these other measures that support, I would say, the training, the inclusion in the ecosystem of these great women innovators that are facing those difficulties, as you have mentioned. Now, Christina, you also mentioned that you're coming from an Eastern European country. I mean, we happen to be in one of them right now, sitting here, which I think has also a vibrant ecosystem emerging, lots of innovators, a lot of science-based innovations that are emerging from Poland and the countries in the region. This is why, by the way, we're here, not only because, of course, it's our job to provide opportunities for all countries of the European Union, but because also we think that there is a particular number of opportunities that are emerging from here, in particular in the deep tech area. But maybe you can explain where you believe, how come, for example, in the program today, we still have an underrepresentation, of course, of these Eastern European countries in relation to the countries further to the north, the west, or even the south of Europe. and what can be done in order to motivate the innovators from the region to come and apply and try to play at that level, at that league that is European and global in order to bring their innovation to success?
It has a lot to do with mindset. And, you know, being modest and not putting oneself out there. It goes back to this believing, oh, we are not good enough, which is not true. There is incredible talent in Eastern Europe. I was born in Romania, and actually I've just talked recently to one of the companies from Romania selected in the EIC, in the accelerator, and I was just mind blown by what they are developing, and it really tackles a huge challenge for people with disabilities. And I was just touched again by how modest or how reluctant people are to put themselves out there. So I urge you to really start sharing your ideas. It is really important that you apply. It is important because like this you can also get the right support to make your startup grow and scale up faster. And it has to do with overcoming, again, that first barrier, that little voice inside your head telling you that you're not good enough, because it is not true. So when I'm talking about Europe becoming a leader in innovation worldwide, because I have a crystal ball, I would argue that a big part of the factors driving this forward are going to be women entrepreneurs working on disruptive innovations and startups coming out of emerging, of the widening countries in Europe. So the time is now.
Yes, thank you for this, Christina. Yes, I'm a firm believer myself, since I'm traveling across the region quite intensively, trying to sell what we have to sell, the program and the opportunities it provides to the region. And I see definitely a bubbling up of initiatives, of startups, of innovations throughout the regions, and definitely we'll maybe have opportunities to travel even further afield to test those. So please come to us. Don't feel shy. Don't feel daunted by the results of so far of the competitions that we have run, of the calls that we have run. What you need to know, of course, is that there is also a support system available if you want to apply, that we have put in place here. It exists. You have people that you can contact and ask them advice about what is the best instrument for you to apply to, and that can give you, I would say, the necessary guidance in order to do that. And we know by experience that countries that have, I would say, a quite good track record in tapping the opportunities offered by the EIC have managed to use those resources very, very well for their innovators and their startuppers. So don't hesitate to use those resources, and we are, of course, always available also to try to be in listening mode and see what can be done more in order to provide access to these opportunities that we have.
And please remember that we in the board, we are there to represent the innovator's voice. We are there giving constant feedback, sometimes also being a bit annoying, I think, because we want to improve, we want to support you in the best possible way. So don't hesitate to get in contact with us. All of us are on LinkedIn, for example, if you'd like to connect. So it is important. And perhaps just to finish with a small personal anecdote, because we were talking about mindset, and that particular mindset coming from Romania, also hold me back, because I had, for quite a long time in my life, thought that I need to prove myself, that I'm not good enough. And then I moved to Switzerland in 2000, and that really reinforced this message, because, of course, you had to show your diplomas and you had to prove a certain level, until I joined a Silicon Valley-based company called Evernote in their early stages. And guess what? I showed up, it was very early on. Back then, there were only a few people on Twitter, and somebody tweeted that they were looking for somebody in Europe. And I saw the tweet, I got in touch with them, and I said, okay, here I am. I think, I'm a beta user of this platform. I love it. I think, I can definitely take on this challenge. And I was expecting, again, to be showing all my diplomas, to have extensive interviews. And basically, they didn't care, So it was like, okay, show us what you can do. Give us your ideas. And then basically, from one day to the other, it was welcome. As of today, you're leading global PR for Evernote Go. And that was the moment really defining for me personally, but also one of those moments that made me see to which extent I was holding myself back, right? So this is why I'm saying, put yourself out there and put yourself out there in the right environments, in the environments that truly support you. And you've seen with the EIC, you have a patient investor on your side. Because chances are, if you're working on a disruptive innovation, nobody will even understand what you're talking about, right? So let alone give you money. So having smart money as a founder, having a very strong ecosystem is incredibly important. So please apply, and please keep building amazing products that contribute to making our world better.
Thank you, Christina, for these words of encouragement. I mean, we have about still 9 minutes, but maybe I can see whether there are a number of questions, and maybe we can answer those questions. Yes, I see one there.
Let me get here closer because I can see you guys. Sorry. Question to Christina. Yeah. Christina, I've seen you've been on this school and you're quite aware about design thinking. Would you have something to say about the importance of design thinking on the startups in the context of you being the board?
Thank you very much for your question. I'm a big fan of design thinking. Why? Because it has to do with taking a user-centric approach. There's been so many examples of smart engineers sitting in a room, developing some incredible technology and not checking in with the real world. One example would be, somebody would work on a very sophisticated MRI system that was supposed to be used for children in hospitals. Now, the technology was absolutely cutting edge, but it was a very scary machine. So they didn't realize the moment they will put something like this in a hospital and children will come together with their families and go through the whole experience, that would be absolutely chilling. And that resulted in additional costs for the hospital because you had to calm the parents, you had to take care of the children. So with design thinking, actually, somebody came in and put themselves in the shoes of children and asked that question: how might we create an enjoyable experience despite the circumstances for children who have to go through this procedure? And then they came up with very ingenious, not expensive solutions. Namely, they painted the machine and it looked like you would just board a spaceship. And then they created a story around it, and they would say, okay, so now you're gonna go on a journey. So when you're in there, you don't have to move because there's, first you will be taking a boat, and then there's some pirates. So if you move, they will hear you. And once you've completed the journey, then there's a treasure box, right? And only by doing that, actually, they managed to significantly reduce the costs linked to the procedure and also have happier patients and families. Now, this is just an anecdote, but to say that so many times when you focus on that technology without checking in with whom may use it later on, you're missing out on many different dimensions that make it actually almost an unsellable product at one point in time, right? So you have an interest early on, and with design thinking, this is what you do. Right? So you take that persona of your ideal potential customer, you put themselves in their shoes and you try to understand what do they need. Because you want to be sure that you respond to their needs. Some of them may be not even known. If you think of some, smartphones, one could argue back then, that how people would have been able to know that they need something like this. But actually, if you go deep enough, you would realize. So taking this user-centric approach is key in building products who add value to the world, but also will make your life as a founder easier when it comes to marketing, selling. Because in the end, the product, if done right, is going to be your most valuable marketing tool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina, for sharing this. I see other questions here, maybe. Yes, one and one.
Ladies first. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you, Christina, for all those very encouraging words. Me being a female founder, it's so refreshing to hear it, especially the last day after all this experience. I'm trying to, when I hear all the descriptions of the programs and the Pathfinder and the transition, it seems like if we really want to be part of it, we need to be scientists, we need to have PhDs, we need to have all these incredible, really almost difficult to understand innovations. But then when I hear you, it's every idea counts, every idea can be disruptive. How do I put these two messages together, and how do you how can we really understand where do we fit in all this process? Especially, for example, I'm not European. I'm actually from Colombia, and in my world, even getting a bachelor's degree is a privilege. So, yeah, how do you find how can I find myself in all these opportunities?
Thank you so much for this question. And first of all, it's great, to hear that you're from Colombia and you're here, and we want more people like you here. So please bring your friends, bring all your innovator friends to Europe, because there's going to be a need for them as well. And to your point, I think, it's important to differentiate. So first of all, with EIC, we are talking about deep tech, right? So we are supporting deep tech anchored in research and science. And this is really important. And as independently of the idea you're working on, my advice to you would be to work with research. Because if you do not do that, what will happen is that you will go on and not be able to do any evidence-based decisions down the line, right? So even if you have a super successful idea, at one point in time, if you're really, really serious, research is going to be somehow part of it. So it is totally okay as a founder not to have a PhD or to be a researcher, as a matter of fact. However, remember that you will have to hire a team, right? So there's companies who have a team and you will have a chief scientist on board, or down the line they add people. So there's always ways. It goes back to what you're trying to do, what is your idea all about, and for you to have the greatest impact, what is needed. I can understand that it may seem overwhelming to look at all the possibilities, right? But this is the beauty of the story, because with the EIC, we wanted you to be more or less in one place and not get some funding now, early stage, and then having to figure it out later on when, past Series A or B. So the idea was to create something that will accompany you, take you from where you are today, but also go along with you until you're basically already scaling up. So although it may take some time to understand, it is pretty straightforward. So there are 3 programs. Pathfinder, your technology readiness level is low. It's 1 to 4. So basically, this is where it's really at the idea stage. You're trying to make sense. You're trying to understand, maybe first validate that idea. Then when the idea is validated, you go into a transition phase, because an idea is worth nothing unless you start building also a business around it, right? And chances are that, especially in early stages, the founding team may not even have that much of experience with that. So it's really important to get that support in the transition phase, because that's kind of the first valley of death, right? And then once you have validated, you have also traction from the market, then it's really about scaling up. Now, this is the second valley of death, because it is easier said than done, and money will not solve many of the problems you will be facing at that stage, right? And this is why it's important to have smart money and also the ecosystem attached to that, because then you can easily plug into networks, right? And it makes a huge difference, because founders, startups are so busy building products, and it's impossible to be all over the place all the time, right? So it's really important to be in this supportive environment. So going back to your question, I would say, if you don't have a researcher in your team today, it doesn't mean that you will not or cannot add one in the future, once you have a more clear idea of where your company is going. I will definitely urge all startups to work with researchers. First of all, because we have an amazing network of researchers in Europe. And then remember, if you really want to make a difference, you need to have an evidence-based approach. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's so much research pointing to interesting development directions in all areas, from energy to medtech to edtech and so on. And we don't have to reinvent the wheels all the time, right? You want to build on synergies. And then if you are not born in Europe, you can be an European, Nobody says that you cannot. So please stay here, bring your friends, and let's make this happen.
We have one more question, but we're running out of time. So I hope maybe Yuri can approach you after the speech, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. It was great for us to share all this with you. Right, Christina, and we'll be happy to, of course, we have a stand, so we'll be happy to follow up on that if you have further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and then wishing you a really nice rest of the conference.